are going to make a mug cozy that uses blocks of a knit block and then a purl block and a knit block and a purl block, which gives some nice interest and texture. And so the supplies we need, I am using a light worsted, and this is a nice wool by Cascade. I am going to use a set of size 7 knitting needles. I'm going to use circular needles. That is definitely not required for this project, but you can often substitute circular needles for straight, and I like my circular set. I'm going to cast on with a needle that's 2 sizes bigger. I'm going to cast on with a 9 using the long tail cast on method. And then we need a row counter, and I like to use some stitch markers, which I'll show you in a minute. So to start, we're going to do the long tail cast on method. So you're going to pull out a stretch of yarn to cast on. I guess I'm kind of doing, 3 feet. I'm making that number up. And then you're going to just tie a slip knot. Then remember, for the long tail cast on, the tail comes toward you. And you pinch your fingers down, put them between the 2 yarns, wrap your hand around the yarn, and kind of turn your hand up. So you have this shape. It's going to run from the outside, from the left, scoop it up, and then go around on the right on just the piece of yarn that's on the left side of your index finger. Scrape down your thumb to go through the little pocket, and use your thumb to come out and pull open a stitch. Okay. So total, we want 45 stitches. I am now going to switch over and start using my needle that's the correct size, my smaller needle. And the pattern says that we're going to knit the first 5 stitches. So I'm going to just do that. 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to place a marker, because this just makes it faster. You don't have to count every single row in your pattern then. You always know that you're going to switch between the knit and purl when you hit a stitch marker. So in our pattern now we're going to purl 5. And then we're going to place another marker. And then we knit 5. And we're going to keep going like that all the way across the row. I'm done with this bigger needle. And I'm all set up with my stitches and all my little sections marked. We're going to start with this first section is purl. So remember, the yarn needs to be in front, and it's kind of coming up over the needle. If it got to the front from behind, you would see we get that kind of extra stitch right there that we don't want. So when you're purling, it comes over the top like this. We just have 1 stitch. And we're just going to purl this first section. I want to talk about the stitch marker for a moment. So when you get to the first marker, you just slip it over. So you just insert your right hand needle and move it over, and it kind of just continues to float there on your needles, or in my case then the cables. And now that told me that after the purl section, it's time to switch to the knit section. And again, that way you just don't have to count. On this side, we started with purl, whereas on the last side, we started with knit, because you want to make blocks where it matches, right? So it'll look on one side like it's a whole block of knit stitches, the little V's, and the next block beside it will all be the purls, the little bumps. But in order to make that happen on a flat piece of fabric, on the section that looks like the little V's, you knit on one row, and then on the next row, that section has to be purled. So that's why it's kind of opposite every other time. And you keep going like this until you have 6 rows, and then you will switch and you'll go the other way, which you can see in the pattern. And the first time we do any deviation from that is on row 13. which I will show you when we get there. There's one tip that I wanted to mention, and that is how to try to get as neat of a line as possible between the blocks. And so here is the trick. Right after you slip the stitch to the next section, you want to make the next stitch a little tighter. And the way you do that is you put your needle in, this is whether it's knit or purl, you wrap the yarn around, and right there is where you just give it a little tug. And then you just use your normal tension for the rest of the stitches in that block. But that first little tug just kind of helps tidy things up. And then I'll show you again here on our first knit stitch. So here's the stitch. I put the needle in, wrap the yarn around. Right there, I just give a little tug and then keep going. And that just helps even up the blocks a bit. Okay, so now I've completed my first 6 rows, and I have alternating sections of the front side of stockinette with the V's and the back side with the little purl bumps all the way across. And now that I'm on row 7, it is time to go the opposite direction. So this was stockinette with the front side when I've been doing knitting, and so now I'm going to do a section of purl and then knit and then purl and then knit. So basically I just finished a row that was purl, section of purl, section of knit, section of purl, section of knit. And now when you flip it over, this is the one time when you do the same thing 2 in a row. Now at the end of row 13, I have 5 stitches left. Move my stitch marker, and the pattern tells us to knit 2 together. So the way you do that is you knit both of these next 2 stitches as if it's one stitch. So you're going to insert the needle into both those stitches together, wrap your yarn around, and pull it through both at once. So you've now decreased 1 stitch. All right, 3 stitches on the left. And then the pattern says to yarn over. So you still just wrap the yarn the normal way, counterclockwise, and I just usually put my finger on it, and then we knit the last 3. So you just leave that little wrap, that yarn over, and that when we go back to the next row is going to create a little bit of a gap. So let's go ahead and go on to row 14, and we'll be able to see that. So this is starts with purl. Okay, so here I am at the yarn over loop that's here on my needle, and I'm just going to knit it like usual, as if it's just a regular loop. I'm going to keep going just a couple more, and then I will come back and we'll look at what that looks like. Okay, so now you'll see we have a little hole right here that we've made, and that is a buttonhole for your button to go in when we stitch it together. So from here, you're just going to keep repeating the pattern until you get to the last row and it is time for the bind off. So now I have finished all of my rows, my little blocks here, and the pattern suggests that we use Jenny's Stretchy Bind Off, which is one of my favorites for any time you want a stretchy edge. You could certainly just do the regular traditional bind off here, but I think we should go ahead and learn how to do Jenny's because it's so versatile. So this is a purl section, so we're going to start just with 1 purl. If this had been a knit section here, we would be starting with 1 knit stitch. Okay. So now you always put in a wrap before your stitch. And if your next stitch is a purl, then you're going to wrap counterclockwise like usual. And then do a purl stitch. And now you have 3 stitches on your right. Your initial purl, your wrap that you did, your yarn over, and then the next purl that you did. And just like a regular bind off, you are then going to insert your needle into the second loop from the hook, loop from the tip, sorry, and pull it right off, and then do that again. So you're down to just 1. So you just have 1 stitch on your right hand needle. And then you're going to do that again. So you're going to wrap the yarn counterclockwise and then purl a stitch and then pull over the second stitch, pull over the second stitch again. So keep getting back down to 1. So we're going to do that for all 5 of the purl stitches. And then I will show you how it changes just a little bit when you do the knit stitch. Okay, we're now done with our stitch marker. So as you reach each stitch marker, you can just set it aside. Now my next stitch is a knit stitch. So for knit stitch, this is one of the times when you're actually going to wrap clockwise. So you're going to wrap clockwise around, like if you're looking down at this right needle like it's a clock, you wrap the yarn clockwise, okay? And then you knit the stitch. So again, you have 3, and from here it's just like we've been doing. You pull over the loop, you pull over the loop. Now I have finished my Jenny Stretchy bind off, and let's just do a test. See, this does fit around my mug. Very nice. So the next thing we need to do is to sew on the button that goes with that buttonhole that we made. So for that you need a button and a toothpick and a regular needle and piece of thread. And there's a video on the Cushion of Joy site for how to sew on the button with all the steps. There is our little buttonhole, just like that. Now, our last step is to weave in the ends. The pattern suggests that you just button your little mug cozy just like this, and you're all done. I admit I don't like the way this is gappy, that it kind of like plops open like that. So when I sew, instead of just weaving these ends in, when I make this pattern, I like to first put a little stitch right here, and I'll show you how to do that, and then same thing at the bottom, one right here. I just think it keeps the whole thing a little bit neater and tidier around your mug. So we're going to learn how to do that, and we'll weave in our ends, and we will be all done. So now to do this, you need a regular yarn needle. Oops, I got caught in my thread. So these are the 2 sides that would come together, and I'm actually just going to loop right in and go back. I'm going to do it just a couple of times. Maybe go down a stitch and do it again. Okay, just like that. It does not have to be a big deal. Go back down so that you are on the wrong side of the fabric. And to make a knot with the yarn, I just go into one of the stitches and pull it through, but you don't want to pull it all the way through. I'm going to keep hold of a little bit of the loop the last time before you cinch it up. And I just put my needle in once and wrap it around again. And then pull that all the way down until it's tight. And then the last thing to do is just weave in the ends. And remember that there is a whole video on how to do that. So there we go. I have woven in, I have sewn both my ends, woven them in, and then I can just put my little mug cozy on my cup, do the button, and there you go. There you have a finished mug cozy. And on the site there is also a pattern for a matching coaster if you want to make that. I hope you enjoyed making it. Great job!